Brendan Dassey trial transcripts, day 2, page 213. Edelstein's continued cross-examination of Newhouse. And I'm going to repeat the question. Okay, what I'm getting at, Mr. Newhouse, just to get down to the point here, the test firings that you made in order to get a clean bullet to be able to do the microscopic examination, the CCI bullets that you took from your stock, you cannot tell us that they are, in fact, the same CCI type which resulted in what you've labeled FL and FK. Is that a fair statement? That's all going to revolve around what you mean by type. The fact of the matter is they are the same type. That doesn't mean there are not differences between what I test fired and what we have in 113 and 114. Well, let's go backwards. Can you tell me precisely what stock number, for example, CCI test fire bullets you used? No. Can you tell me what stock number F, assuming they're CCI, FK, and FL were? No, I cannot. All right. You undertook no efforts, and correct me if I'm wrong, to have any comparison done between FK and FL as they relate to one another with respect to the metallurgy composition of those shells, correct? Or those, that's correct. Or those bullets? And Mr. Newhouse, let me ask you this. Was there submitted to you for any examination a box of CCI 22s? None that I'm aware of, no. None that I examined, certainly. When things get submitted for you to examine, they get a number and everything has one particular number for your file purposes, right? That's correct. Okay, and you've had a chance to look at your records in anticipation of your testimony? Yes. If a box of 22 shells were submitted to you for examination in connection with this case, it would be reflected in those records, right? If I examined it, yes. Well, my point is that it's possible a box of ammunition could have been submitted that I didn't see. Submitted to the lab? Yes. Doesn't mean it made it to you? Correct. But the bottom line again is nothing was submitted to you? That's correct. Okay, so if there were some shells recovered from a particular crime scene, you undertook no efforts to compare your FK, your FL to anything else that was submitted, correct? That's correct. All right, I believe you testified that either FK or FL had characteristics of a coated bullet? Yes, they both did. They both did? Okay. Copper? I'm sorry, what? Copper? I would presume of copper alloy, the more likely. Okay, you didn't undertake any test to determine? None. All right. No. So from your testimony, we know that FK was fired in that particular rifle you've examined. It was the one that I designated FL. Oh, I'm sorry, FL. Okay, FL being the one with 19.7 grains remaining? Yes, I believe that's correct. And when I say remaining, you can't tell this jury how many grains it may have originated with, can you? No. All right, I cannot. And the same would be true on FK as far as weight? I could only guess. I wouldn't be able to determine specifically no. And that's because the manufacturers vary the weights of the bullet, right? Yep, that's correct. So FL, you're satisfied, came out of that gun? That's correct. FK, we can't really say, can't say the same thing, certainly? That's correct. Okay, and certainly you absolutely cannot say what or who caused either FK or FL for that matter, arguing they both maybe came out of there, caused them to be projected through the barrel of that rifle? No, I cannot. You have nothing by way of your examination whatsoever to suggest that it was fired at any time by this defendant, correct? That's correct. Okay, that's really out of your bailiwick, right? Yes, it is. All right, that's all. Thank you. The court. Any redirect, counsel? Attorney Fallon, one clarification. Redirect examination by Attorney Fallon. I take it is possible that item FK, Exhibit 114, was discharged by the weapon 129 at least it's the same general characteristics? Yes, it is possible. But beyond that, you cannot say for any degree of certainty. That's right. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Attorney Edelstein. Judge, just some real quick follow-up. Recross examination by Attorney Edelstein. When you say it could be, isn't it just as likely, Mr. Newhouse, that one that counsel just referred to, FK, could not have been fired from that gun? I simply can't say, and that's what that means. Thank you, that's all. The court, all right, you may step down. The witness, thank you. The court, I think we'll take a recess now for about 15 minutes. Counsel, if I could see you for just a couple of minutes. Attorney Fallon, sure. Recess had at 2:57 p.m., reconvened at 3:20 p.m. The court, before proceeding, I'd like to remind the media that the trial administration order says that during recesses, the camera should not be operating, and during this past recess, it was. So I'd appreciate it if you could look a little bit more closely at that. All right, gentlemen, are you ready to proceed, Mr. Fallon? Attorney Fallon, yes. State would call Kenneth Olson. The court, is it your plan that Mr. Olson will be your last witness this afternoon? Attorney Fallon, yes. The clerk, raise your right hand, please. Kenneth Olson, called as a witness herein, having been first duly sworn, was examined and testified as follows. The clerk, be seated. State your name and spell your last name for the record, please. The witness, Kenneth B. Olson, O-L-S-O-N. Direct examination by Attorney Fallon. How are you employed? I'm a forensic scientist at the State Crime Laboratory in Madison. And how long have you been employed in that capacity? Approximately 27 years. What type of forensic science do you practice at the crime lab? My main duties at the crime laboratory is in the area of trace evidence examination. I examine a variety of materials: paint, glass, fibers, plastics, metals, anything that needs chemical identification or comparison that doesn't fit into drugs, toxicology, or DNA. All right, and how long have you been actively engaged in the trace evidence field? The whole time that I've been employed at the laboratory. All right. Have you ever been a member of, for instance, of the field response unit for the crime lab? Yes, I was an active member of our field response program for 24 years. All right. Are you a current member? I kind of fill in as needed. All right. How is it that you became involved in this particular case? I was asked to examine several items that were recovered during the investigation of this case, items from a burning barrel and some charred bones. All right, and in particular, your reason for being here today is to provide us the results of your examinations? That's correct. All right. Before we do so, I'd like to find out a little bit about your background. I'm going to have Exhibit 136 given to you by Investigator Wiegert. Do you recognize Exhibit 136? Yes, I do. What is Exhibit 136? Exhibit 136 is a statement of my qualifications. And did you prepare that exhibit? Yes, I did. All right. Well, first of all, let's talk about your educational experience. First of all, do you have an undergraduate degree? Yes, I do. And from which institution? I have a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Wisconsin at Superior with a major in chemistry. All right. Have you received any post-graduate experience at all in our courses of that ilk? I took a couple of Masters of Business Administration courses. Very good. And what particular on-the-job training have you received to assist you in performing the tests that you currently perform for the crime lab? Since being employed at the crime laboratory in the area of trace evidence, I did a 3-year apprenticeship type activity, learning the different aspects of trace evidence. So I had extensive on-the-job training, and the laboratory sent me to several schools over those training years in all the different areas that I do analysis, with the different types of instruments that we use to the different types of evidence that we handle. All right. Are there any particular associations or organizations that you belong to, either for training purposes or for professional development? Yes, relating to forensic science, I'm a member of the Midwest Association of Forensic Scientists. I'm also a member of the Association for Crime Scene Reconstruction and a member of the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts. All right, and do you regularly attend trainings in these areas of specialization to maintain current familiarity with the research and the literature and general crime scene processing requirements? As often as I can. All right, when did you first become involved in this case? What was your first assigned task? The first evidence that I examined in this case, I received some items from a burning barrel on December 1, 2005. What kind of items did you examine from a burn barrel? The items were submitted I put the materials out on an exam table, and I found items from a cell phone. It was a Motorola cell phone. You could tell that the just visually the material, it was consistent with a cell phone, flip phone, and I found charred remains of a Canon Sure Shot A310 camera, and then some other electrical components and some batteries. All right. Did you recommend any additional or further forensic work on that material that you yourself were unable to conduct? I was asked if I could get any information from the cell phone or the components of the camera, and I informed the investigators that our laboratory's not equipped to do that type of analysis. I'm basically one that can examine things either visually or microscopically and give them investigative leads. So if they needed a more in-detailed analysis, they would have to send that to another laboratory or the FBI. All right. After examining the contents of the burn barrel, what was the next matter which concerned your expertise? In February of 2006, I was asked to examine some skull fragments, some charred skull fragments from a burning pit. Specifically, they wanted me to examine an entrance defect into that skull fragment. All right, and describe the skull fragment that you were asked to examine. The skull fragment was a small, approximately 2 inches in diameter piece of charred skull that had a hole in it, and that hole had some beveling on the outer surface, and it had some beveling or concave appearance on the inside of the bone fragment. All right, I'm showing having Investigator Wiegert show you a photograph. What exhibit number is that, please? Exhibit 140 is a photograph of that cranial skull fragment that I examined that had the beveling and the, can't think of the term, the concave nature of the bone. Attorney Freeman, Judge, at this point I don't know if I necessarily have an objection, but I suppose I'd like some more foundation from this witness. He's referring to it as a cranial or a skull fragment. I don't think the expert has, well, I don't think he has an expertise to say what type of bone this is other than someone told me it might have been a cranial bone. I know he mentioned charred bones when he was talking about what he reviewed, and now it's referred to as a cranial bone. If there could be some more foundation as to how he knows what that is. Attorney Fallon, that's where I'm going next. Attorney Freeman, okay. The court, all right. Attorney Freeman, thank you. Attorney Freeman, from whom did you receive these items for purposes of analysis? Ooh, that says it's Freeman, but it has to be Fallon because it's a question. Okay, Attorney Fallon, from whom did you receive these items for purposes of analysis? These items were originated from Dr. Leslie Eisenberg, an anthropologist with the State Historical Society. All right, and did the items that you examined, they did receive a crime lab designation, is that correct? Yes, they did. All right, and first of all, tell us about the items that were, how they were originally submitted to you in their packaging. Would you describe that for us, please? Could I refer to my notes to that? Sure. This particular item in Exhibit 140 was received in a box from DCI, and item EJ, which is that bone fragment there, was received in 3 sealed plastic Ziploc bags. One was labeled cranial refits with suspected entrance deficit. The second one was labeled cranial refits, and the third one was labeled cranial refits. I was only interested in the suspected entrance defect in that one skull fragment. All right, and again, from whom were those items received? EJ and EK were submitted by special agents, Special Agent James Holmes, Division of Criminal Investigation. That's correct. Now, you mentioned something about Dr. Eisenberg. Were there indications or markings on the materials indicating that she had previously examined those items? Yes, those were her markings, her initials. All right, and her labeling? Yes. All right, very well. With respect to of the items that you examined, you indicated you only examined one item. Of the 2 that were submitted, item EJ and EK, I only examined the one fragment from item EK, or EJ, excuse me. All right, and the other items were, how were they labeled? The other item was a sealed plastic bag with bone fragments labeled cranial / face / dental. All right, and was there any indication of a suspected entrance defect on item EK? No, there was not. All right, let's begin then with item EJ. Specifically, how did you begin your analysis of that item?